Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most pervasive habits that silently erodes respect is the constant need for validation. Now, let's be clear. There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to be acknowledged or appreciated. That's human. We're social beings. We've evolved to live in tribes, to cooperate, to depend on the approval of others for survival. But there's a crucial difference between being socially aware and being psychologically dependent. When your sense of self is built on the shifting sands of other people's opinions, you're no longer in control of your identity. You become a mirror, not a person. And people don't respect mirrors, they use them. At its core, the chronic need for validation reveals a deeper issue: insecurity. If your decisions, your values, your ambitions are always contingent on external applause, then they're not really yours. You're renting your identity from the crowd, and at any moment the crowd can change its mind. That's a dangerous place to live. It makes you reactive, not proactive. You adapt yourself to fit in rather than standing out. You become agreeable to avoid confrontation, even when confrontation is necessary. You water down your message, soften your voice, mute your potential, just to be liked. And here's the irony: the more you try to please everyone, the less respect you actually command. People are quick to recognize when someone is desperate for approval. It's in the body language, in the tone of voice, in the way someone hesitates before expressing an opinion, checking first to see what the room thinks. That hesitation signals uncertainty, and uncertainty doesn't breed respect, it breeds doubt. True respect, the kind that lasts, isn't born from charm or popularity, it's born from principle. It's earned when you speak with conviction, not just charisma, when you take a stance that might not be popular, but it's what you believe. People might not agree with you, but they'll listen, they'll remember. Why? Because so few people are willing to do it. In a world that rewards surface-level performance, depth is magnetic. Now let's look at this psychologically. From a developmental perspective, individuals who constantly seek validation often missed crucial affirmations early in life. Perhaps they were only rewarded when they performed well, or maybe they were punished for expressing opinions that deviated from the norm. Over time, they learned a dangerous lesson. My value is conditional, and once that belief takes root, it can drive a lifetime of approval-chasing behaviors, always trying to earn the right to exist in someone else's eyes. Philosophically, this ties into something much deeper, the question of identity and meaning. If you don't define yourself from within, you will be defined by whatever culture, trend, or ideology happens to dominate the moment. That's not a life of freedom, it's a life of quiet slavery. Viktor Frankl once said that when a person can no longer find a sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And often external validation is one of those distractions. The dopamine hit of a like, a compliment, or a nod of approval becomes a substitute for real inner peace. But it never lasts. It's always a loan, never an investment. The antidote? You need to build your values like a fortress. That means spending time understanding what you truly believe. Not what you were told to believe, not what's trending on social media, but what resonates with the deepest part of who you are. It means asking uncomfortable questions. What do I stand for? What am I willing to be criticized for? What line will I not cross, even if it costs me admiration? That kind of introspection is hard, it demands honesty and humility, but it also produces clarity. And once you have clarity, you no longer need to beg for respect, because you've already earned it from yourself. And that's the key. Self-respect is the foundation for all other forms of respect. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. Not for long. You can manipulate people into liking you, you can flatter them, agree with them, entertain them, but deep down, people are drawn to authenticity. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. And when someone walks into a room fully at ease with who they are, not arrogant, but grounded, it creates a ripple effect. You don't have to shout, you don't have to convince anyone, your presence does the talking. So the next time you catch yourself altering your words to get a pat on the back or holding back an opinion because you're afraid someone might disapprove, pause. Ask yourself, am I living from a place of truth or a place of fear? Because one will make you powerful and the other will make you invisible. Here's the truth most people avoid. Not everyone will like you. And that's a blessing, because when you stop trying to be everything to everyone, you finally become something real to someone, including yourself. Let that be the standard. Seek truth, not approval, and respect will follow. There's a curious paradox when it comes to communication and respect. The people who command the most respect in a room are often the ones who speak the least, not because they have nothing to say, but because they know when not to say it. They understand that wisdom isn't demonstrated by how loudly or how often you speak. It's revealed in the discipline to listen, to observe, to understand before responding. And that habit, listening before speaking, is slowly becoming a lost art. We live in an age where everyone has a platform, a microphone, a feed. The culture rewards quick takes, strong opinions, and fast responses. The problem with that is simple. If everyone is broadcasting, who's receiving? Who's absorbing? Who's integrating the complexity of what's actually being said? Because true understanding, the kind that fosters respect, requires more than just waiting for your turn to speak. It demands presence, patience, a willingness to suspend your own ego long enough to truly engage with another person's perspective. When someone constantly talks over others, interrupts, or redirects conversations back to themselves, it sends an unmistakable signal. What I have to say is more important than what you have to say. Now think about what that implies. It's not just arrogant, it's dismissive. It reduces the other person from a thinking, feeling human being to a prop in your monologue, and people pick up on that, even subconsciously. They may laugh at your jokes or nod while you talk, but deep down the respect erodes. You become entertaining, maybe even impressive, but not respected. Listening, on the other hand, is a show of strength. It's a restraint of the ego. It's a signal that says, I don't need to dominate this interaction to validate myself. I'm confident enough to be curious. That kind of presence is powerful. It builds rapport, trust, and yes, respect, because it demonstrates maturity. It shows that you're not just playing the game of conversation to win, you're engaging, to connect, to learn, to grow. From a psychological standpoint, this need to speak accessibly often comes from insecurity masked as confidence. People who are unsure of their value tend to compensate by proving themselves verbally. They try to dominate the space, as if volume and quantity of speech will somehow elevate their worth in the eyes of others. But it doesn't work. It backfires, because people don't remember what you say nearly as much as they remember how you made them feel, and being talked at rather than talked with rarely feels good. There's also a deeper philosophical issue here. The ancient Greeks understood the value of dialogue, true dialogue. Socrates, for instance, didn't give long speeches. He asked questions, he probed, he listened. He believed that wisdom wasn't something you deposited into another person like a lecture. It was something you discovered together through conversation. That requires humility, a recognition that no matter how much you know, there's always something more to learn, especially from the person in front of you, if you're willing to listen. And make no mistake, listening isn't passive. It's not about staying silent until it's your turn to speak again. It's active, it's engaged, it's asking better questions, not just offering better answers. It's tuning in not just to words, but to tone, to expression, to what's not being said. And when you do that, you start to see people in a much clearer light. You begin to understand their motivations, their fears, their values. That understanding becomes a kind of superpower, because when people feel understood, they open up. They trust you, and from trust comes respect. But this is hard because it requires putting your ego on the back burner. It demands that you stop seeing every interaction as an opportunity to impress and start seeing it as an opportunity to connect. That's a fundamental shift in how we relate to others. It's not about shrinking or silencing yourself. It's about being strategic with your voice, about knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. There's an old saying, a wise man speaks because he has something to say. A fool speaks because he has to say something. That's timeless wisdom. If you want to be respected, stop filling silence for the sake of it. Don't rush to offer your opinion before you've absorbed the situation. Don't interrupt to win a point when you haven't heard the full story. And don't confuse dominance with leadership. Leadership listens first. So in your next conversation, pause. Let the silence stretch a bit longer than feels comfortable. Ask a question and actually wait for the full answer. Don't plan your reply while the other person is still speaking. Just be there. Listen like it matters, because it does. And in doing so, you send a subtle but unmistakable message. I see you. I value what you have to say. I don't need to be the center of attention to know who I am. That message, unspoken but deeply felt, is what earns real respect. In a world obsessed with being heard, become the one who listens, and you'll stand out without ever raising your voice. One of the surest ways to lose respect, quickly and irreversibly, is to make a habit of avoiding responsibility. And let's not confuse this with occasional human error. We all falter, we all rationalize at times, but there's a deeper pattern that develops in some people, a chronic reflex to deflect blame, to justify shortcomings, to point outward instead of inward whenever things go wrong. That habit doesn't just damage your credibility, it corrodes your character. Now, the psychology behind excuse making is worth examining. When something goes wrong, especially if it's tied to our own actions, There's an immediate emotional discomfort. A sense of shame or inadequacy or fear of judgment begins to creep in. And the quickest way to relieve that tension is to find an external cause. It wasn't my fault. They didn't give me enough time. The system is rigged. And sometimes those external factors are real. Life is unfair. Circumstances do play a role. But when your first instinct is always to externalize the problem, what you're really doing is surrendering control. You're telling the world and yourself, I'm not the author of my own outcomes. And here's the kicker. People may sympathize with your story, but they won't respect it. Because respect isn't given to victims of circumstance, it's given to those who rise above them. The people we look up to, the ones we admire, they're not perfect. In fact, they're often deeply flawed. But what sets them apart is their willingness to own those flaws, to say, yes, I failed. Yes, I made the wrong call. Yes, I could have done better. That admission, that brutal honesty, it takes courage. And courage is magnetic. Philosophically, this touches something ancient and deeply human, the relationship between freedom and responsibility. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot demand autonomy, personal power, or respect while simultaneously refusing to bear the burden of your choices. Freedom without responsibility leads to chaos. Responsibility without freedom leads to tyranny. But when both are embraced together, they create something noble, something transformative. They create maturity. If you want to grow, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want people to trust you with more influence, more opportunity, more leadership, you must cultivate the habit of looking in the mirror first. And that's not easy. It forces you to confront your limitations, your blind spots, your contribution to your own suffering. But it also gives you access to something much more powerful, agency. Because once you admit this was my fault, you also gain the power to say, and I can fix it. This mindset isn't just for crisis moments. It applies in the small, mundane failures too. You miss a deadline, you lose your temper, you forget an obligation. There's always a temptation to protect your ego by explaining it away. I was under pressure, they provoked me, I had too much on my plate. But with every excuse, you teach people, whether consciously or not, that you are unreliable, that your word doesn't hold weight, that when things get hard, you'll find a way to disappear from responsibility. People notice that. They may not always call it out, but they notice, and trust, once cracked, rarely returns to its original form. Contrast that with someone who takes accountability without being prompted. They're the first to say, I dropped the ball, that's on me, here's how I'll fix it. Instantly, respect increases, even if they failed, even if the outcome was negative. Because in that moment, they showed character, they showed strength. And strength, especially moral strength, is what compels people to listen, to follow, to believe. This is something I often tell people. Don't strive to be blameless, strive to be responsible. There's a world of difference. Blamelessness is reactive. It's focused on image, on reputation, on avoiding consequences. But responsibility is proactive. It's concerned with truth, with growth, with integrity. And integrity is the backbone of respect. Without it, your words don't matter. Your talents don't matter. Even your results don't matter because people will always be waiting for the other shoe to drop. But with integrity, even your failures carry weight because people know this person is honest, they're accountable, they're trustworthy. There's a stoic discipline in taking responsibility. It's not about being hard on yourself, it's about being hard enough to grow. And when you stop making excuses, something amazing happens. People begin to believe in you more. Why? Because you've stopped hiding. You've become someone who deals with life as it is, not as you wish it would be. And that level of groundedness, that psychological solidity draws people in. It's rare and it's deeply respected. So the next time you're tempted to shift the blame, pause. Ask yourself, not what went wrong, but what was my role in it? What could I have done differently? What will I do differently next time? That mindset alone elevates you above the average because in a world full of finger pointing, the one who takes ownership stands tallest. Excuses protect your pride. Accountability builds your legacy. Choose wisely. There's something deeply corrosive about the habit of speaking negatively about others behind their backs. It may seem harmless on the surface. In fact, in many social circles, it's the norm. Gossip lubricates small talk. It creates a sense of shared knowledge, even intimacy. But here's the deeper truth. Every time you speak poorly about someone who isn't present, you're not just revealing something about them, you're revealing something far more important about yourself. You see, when people engage in gossip, they often believe they're gaining power, that by tearing someone else down, they elevate themselves, even if just slightly. But the opposite is true. You're not elevating, you're shrinking. You're showing that your self-worth is so fragile, so dependent on hierarchy and comparison that you need to reduce others in order to feel secure. That doesn't inspire respect. It inspires caution. People may laugh with you in the moment, but they walk away wondering what you'll say about them when they're not around. And they should wonder, because if you've shown them that you're willing to speak disloyally about one person, it's only a matter of time before you do the same about another. You become a liability, not an asset. Untrustworthy. People might keep you around, but it will be for entertainment, not respect. There's a psychological mechanism at play here. Gossip serves as a form of social bonding, especially among insecure individuals. It allows people to project internal conflict outward. Instead of facing their own flaws, inadequacies, or fears, they displace them onto someone else. Look at how she dresses. Look at how he talks. Can you believe what he did? It's a deflection, a shield, and for a moment it feels good. There's a rush of superiority, but it's hollow and it comes at a cost. The erosion of your integrity, and with it, the erosion of others' trust in you. From a philosophical standpoint, this is about character. Character is not revealed when you're in the spotlight. It's revealed in the dark, in the quiet, in the conversations that no one else hears. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you say when the person you're speaking about has no chance to defend themselves? That's the real measure of who you are. And if you want to be respected, truly respected, you must be the kind of person who doesn't participate in that darkness, or better yet, someone who interrupts it. Now, this doesn't mean you have to pretend that people are flawless. It doesn't mean you ignore real problems or act naively, but there's a difference between honest critique and petty criticism. The former is constructive. It's rooted in care, truth, and the desire to improve. The latter is destructive. It's rooted in resentment, envy, or boredom. One aims to build, the other to erode. This is something we all need to watch in ourselves. It's tempting, especially when we feel powerless or frustrated, to vent, to let off steam, to make ourselves feel better by highlighting the flaws of others. But if you're doing that, pause. Ask yourself, what purpose does this serve? Is it to help someone grow, or is it to make myself feel superior without doing the work to become superior? Because here's the thing, high-value people don't waste their energy on low-value speech. They don't need to. They're too busy building themselves, their vision, their relationships. They're not interested in who failed or who stumbled unless there's a lesson to be learned. They operate with dignity, and that dignity is precisely why they command respect. And when you live this way, something powerful begins to happen. People begin to trust your silence. It sounds strange, but it's true. When you consistently refuse to gossip, when you don't indulge in cheap criticism, people feel safer around you. They know that if you have something to say, you'll say it to their face, not behind their back. And that kind of clarity, that kind of integrity is rare. It's what separates people who are merely liked from people who are truly respected. Now, this doesn't mean you won't be tempted. You will. It's part of being human. But mastery isn't the absence of temptation. It's the refusal to indulge in it. And over time, you'll notice that your conversations change. They become deeper, richer, more meaningful. Because they're not built on tearing others down. They're built on ideas, on insight, on shared purpose. And people will notice. They might not say it out loud, but they'll feel it. They'll feel that when you speak, it comes from a place of strength, not spite. That you're someone who chooses words with care, who values truth over social currency. And that's rare, and it's powerful. So if you want to earn respect, real lasting respect, start here. Guard your tongue. Speak as if the person you're talking about were in the room. And if what you're saying wouldn't hold up in their presence, it probably isn't worth saying at all. Because how you speak about others when they're not around says everything about who you are when you are. There's a subtle but devastating trap that many people fall into, especially in this age of digital metrics, likes, and instant feedback. And it's the habit of constantly seeking validation. It's that quiet compulsion to be seen, affirmed, applauded. On the surface, it can look like ambition or confidence or charisma. But if you dig just a little deeper, what you often find is something much more fragile. A person who doesn't know how to feel worthy unless someone else tells them they are. And here's the brutal truth. No one respects a person who needs constant validation. People may pity them, they may indulge them, they may even offer praise just to avoid conflict. But respect, That only comes when you are rooted in something deeper than public opinion, something more solid than applause. Because the moment your self-worth depends on external affirmation, you've surrendered your power. You've handed over your emotional stability to other people. You're letting them decide who you are, what you're worth, and how you should feel about yourself. And the danger in that is not just that people are inconsistent, it's that they're often wrong. And more importantly, their praise or criticism is almost always about them, not you. Their biases, their projections, their preferences. So to build your identity on the shifting sands of their approval is to guarantee emotional chaos. You see this play out all the time. People shape-shifting, filtering their personalities, adopting beliefs they don't really hold, all to fit in, to be accepted, to belong. And the irony is, in doing so, they lose the very thing that would have earned them genuine respect in the first place: authenticity. Now, this isn't a call to ignore feedback or to pretend that other people's opinions never matter. That's delusion, not strength. What I'm saying is that validation cannot be your fuel. It cannot be the reason you speak, act, or create. Because the moment it becomes your motivation, you become manipulative. Not necessarily in a malicious way, but in a psychological sense. Your behavior becomes calculated, aimed at getting a reaction rather than expressing truth. And truth matters. Because truth is the foundation of real self-worth. Not image, not perception, not applause. Truth. Psychologically speaking, those who chase validation are often trying to fill an internal void, a space where identity and meaning should live. But that space cannot be filled from the outside in. It has to be built from the inside out, through competence, through discipline, through sacrifice, through telling the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable, through becoming someone who you yourself can respect. And that's a question worth sitting with. Are you someone you would respect if you weren't you? Not someone you like. We all like ourselves. But someone you would respect if you observed your life from the outside. Would you admire your work ethic, your consistency, your courage, your honesty? If not, the work begins there. Not in fishing for compliments, but in forging character. This is where philosophy comes in. Think of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. These men weren't chasing applause. They understood that the opinions of the crowd are fickle and often foolish. If you seek tranquility, Marcus wrote, do less. Do only what is essential, which brings a double satisfaction: to do less, better. He wasn't concerned with being admired. He was concerned with being just, with doing the right thing, even if no one noticed, especially if no one noticed, because that's the crucible of character. What do you do when no one is watching? Who are you when there's no audience? That's where self-respect is born. And self-respect is the soil from which all other respect grows. You don't earn respect by demanding it or begging for it or staging it. You earn it by becoming someone of substance. And substance doesn't come from attention. It comes from discipline, from integrity, from the refusal to betray yourself just to be accepted by others. Now, this is hard, especially if you've spent years tying your worth to applause. There's a kind of withdrawal that comes with letting that go. But on the other side is something far more powerful: freedom. The freedom to act in alignment with your values, the freedom to say no, the freedom to be disliked by some people and not flinch because you know who you are, and that's enough. And paradoxically, once you no longer need validation, you start to attract real respect, not because you were chasing it, but because people are drawn to authenticity, to strength, to those who are rooted. You become someone others can trust, not because you're always agreeable, but because you're real. And in a world full of performance, realness is magnetic. So if there's one habit you must kill to earn respect, it's this one: the compulsive need to be liked. Let it die. Replace it with the commitment to be worthy. And that worthiness, earned in private, forged in discipline, tested in silence, will speak louder than any words ever could. Don't live to be validated, live to be undeniable. So let's take a step back and look at the landscape we've just walked through. We've exposed 5 deeply embedded habits, ones that might seem small or socially acceptable on the surface, but beneath that, they erode your character, fracture your credibility, and ultimately cost you the one thing no amount of charisma or talent can replace: respect. Disrespecting your own word, refusing to take accountability, blaming instead of building, tearing others down with gossip, and chasing validation like a currency of self-worth. These aren't just bad habits, they are evidence of something more serious, a misalignment between who you appear to be and who you actually are. And that gap, if left unchecked, will sabotage your reputation, your relationships, and your potential. Because people don't respect perfection, they respect integrity. They don't follow those who shout the loudest. They follow those who stand firm when it's inconvenient, who speak the truth even when it costs them, and who take responsibility even when no one else is willing to. Respect is not demanded, it is not negotiated, it is earned day by day, action by action, in the small, invisible decisions you make when no one is clapping and no one is watching. So the question you have to ask yourself is not, how can I get more people to like me? The real question is, can I become someone I genuinely respect? If the answer is yes, if you commit to removing these habits, not just to impress others, but to honor who you're becoming, then the respect you're seeking will follow, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. Clean up your character, and the world will start to take you seriously. Because when you respect yourself first, authentically, courageously, the rest of the world has no choice but to follow.